Hey guys, what's up? Public here back on the video, and today I want to give kind of a just-in-time guide for leveling a Shadow Priest in the War Within. Just going to go over kind of quickly leveling builds and a couple tips along the way to think about, and kind of setting up some future stuff. Let's dive in. Alright, so for leveling a Shadow Priest in the War Within, I think this is the first time in a while where I felt like you have a bit of choice here, and I wanted to kind of talk about it because I think it's going to be a common question kind of the weekend of leveling that we kind of have coming up for us. And I wanted to kind of give people a bit of an idea of what those choices mean. So specifically, starting at level 71, you get access to hero talents. You can play as either Archon or Voidweaver as a Shadow Priest. If you haven't watched any of my other content yet on kind of previewing what those look like, I'll kind of use this as a little bit of a refresher here. In the background, you'll see some footage of me playing as that hero talent, doing quests, leveling. I think I did a delve and that kind of stuff. Just going to give an idea of how it looks and how it plays. And I'll kind of show the build as well. So, as a Shadow Priest, you get to choose if you want to play Archon at level 71, which is mostly going to play very similar to what we're used to. The changes that you get here is that you press Halo to augment your abilities. In particular, it augments your cooldowns, which, is kind of... It's not the most important thing while leveling, particularly in like the open world environment, because cooldowns are quite long, and usually as you're leveling, things just die so quickly that pressing cooldowns usually isn't needed. We're not out here like farming rares because they don't give that much experience. That can be kind of cool for dungeons though, if you want to like really blast inside of a dungeon. But typically, you're just kind of pulling mobs that are dying in a few seconds. So not the greatest appeal for Archon, but the Halo can be kind of cool. They have made changes based on feedback that Halo doesn't pull enemies unless you're in combat with that enemy, which on one hand is good for most like high-end group content. In the open world, it means you can't use Halo to like pull the whole screen of mobs. So you can't do that. But the kind of the main benefit of Archon, which might interest you, is it ridiculously buffs your Mind Flay Insanity or Mind Spike Insanity casts. So, which is kind of where the build is surfacing. For the most part, it's leveling, have fun, play whatever you want. But as Archon, the main thing that you're getting is that kind of empowered surges, which you can get right away as soon as you hit level 71. It's like one of the first points that you can actually talent into as Archon, which is really nice, which just lets your surges happen more often, and then eventually you can actually buff them with empowered surges to get more of them. So it's kind of a nice little build in that, once you hit 70, I think 2, you kind of really pop off, you get empowered surges. It's pretty good. So depending on what you're doing, you go dungeons, you can get perfected form a little bit early to get that kind of boost of Dark Ascension or Void Eruption damage, depending on what you're looking for. But that's kind of the Archon build in a nutshell. So definitely something that's going to interest some people. This is probably the build that you're going to play the most. As of right now, I mean, who knows where tuning will end up, but this is the build that you're probably going to end up playing the most in high-end Mythic Plus, as well as raid encounters. It's the best for like single target. Most raid fights will play Archon. So if you want to kind of practice what that's going to feel like, you can try out Archon. Now, switching gears over to Voidweaver. So Voidweaver is the other option that you can pick for leveling as a Shadow Priest. The talent build is quite similar. The main difference here between Archon to Voidweaver is that we're swapping out of Void Eruption and moving into Dark Ascension. Now, of course, again, it's leveling, kind of play whatever you want, but this is just kind of how those builds lean in general, not just with leveling. So kind of try to mimic the build based on that as well. So with Voidweaver, you almost always want to play Dark Ascension, and with that, you're changing the leveling build to now you have access to Entropic Rift. So instead of kind of having Halo for that like mid-tier burst every minute, now you have Void Torrent every 30 seconds spawning the Rift. Now, personally, this is kind of where I lean just thematically. I think Voidweaver is just really cool to look at, and it's a cool effect. And I do like that the Rift does happen more often, so it feels like a little bit I can kind of just send this quite often and have it out a lot. However, the kind of downside of this is, and you'll see this a lot in the footage probably, as mobs are moving around, the Rift is kind of useless. Like, it's just traveling very slowly from like pack to pack. So you're not getting like as much out of it as you might otherwise. And mobs are dying so fast, you like hardly have time to press Void Blast. Now, the footage is mostly me at like 71, 72-ish, like really early leveling. As you get up to higher levels, this will obviously change a little bit as things get a bit more difficult. But at least early on, things are going to feel like they're just dying really fast. But one of the reasons why I like Voidweaver is not only do you have the Rift, if they can stand in that, you can kind of group mobs up, do a big chunk of damage. You also just get 20% additional dot damage. which I personally really like. One of my favorite play styles to play, actually, transitioning to that a little bit, is with Unfurling Darkness. This is a talent that no one takes basically ever in PvE, but I actually find it's kind of fun to play with it inside of open world and like leveling, just because things are dying so quickly, and Unfurling Darkness actually hits kind of hard, and in some sense, when you're dotting so many mobs, it's kind of natural. You're not really playing around it, but every 15 seconds when you dot something, your next cast does just a big chunk of damage in addition to also dotting them. You can see I kind of play with that quite a bit, and even in single target, you can kind of just use it as a proc to do damage, and it's instant cast, so you can kind of keep on moving, which is nice. And Void Weaver in particular has a node very early on called Inner Quietus, which just buffs your dots by 20%. So this is actually I think it's just really fun to play with, and you're just kind of a dotting machine. You get it really early on, and you can kind of just dot a whole ton of stuff. It's still strong in dungeons if you want to play it kind of early on, like Void Weaver versus Archon, very competitive in that kind of quick-paced, one pack at a time type stuff. So that's cool. So if you want to play Void Weaver, you absolutely can. The one kind of caveat is that Void Weaver probably won't see a whole lot of play once we get to max level, particularly once you start pushing higher up in Mythic Plus content, and once you get into raiding, Void Weaver really kind of falls off. Its strengths right now, at a high-end content perspective, is like lower level Mythic Plus. We're not quite sure what that cutoff is yet. It's kind of group dependent, but the guess is by the time you hit plus 10, it's probably not going to be played very much. And then the other thing which might come into play is Void Weaver has a really interesting talent called Devour Matter, which I've already done a video on it if you haven't seen that, which is basically you deal extra damage to absorb shields with Shadow Word Death, and then kind of get that absorb shield munching effect. So it does have some of that. Like if there's a fight that has a really important absorb shield thing, the last couple bosses in the raid might be that. I don't know. Could be fun. So that's kind of Archon versus Void Weaver. Try them out, see what you like, see what have fun with it. The builds on Icy Veins are updated by the time this video is out, so if you want to see the kind of full build path, you can actually, in the guide itself, click talents by level, and it'll be like, okay, you can pick this, that, if you want to go off my suggestion. But again, have fun with it. It's pretty open to what you'd like, and it does give you kind of a rotational primer as well. If you don't want to like have the full like rotation page up or anything, you just kind of want to see what rough priorities are, it's all on that one page for you to look at. The other thing I will mention with leveling is war mode. So as a Shadow Priest, if you'd like to enable more war mode, you have a couple cool talents I'll just kind of make a note of. If you didn't know, being in war mode obviously is like group PvP while you're leveling potentially, although depending on how many people are active on your current shard like of that leveling server, if there's not that many people, it's just a free 10% experience bonus, and it would help you level faster. But the cool part with this is you get access to war mode talents. As a Shadow Priest, the 3 that I think are really cool, the ones that I'll mention for kind of these builds that I'm suggesting. The first one is Catharsis. If you're leveling solo, this thing is going to be really helpful. It's just kind of a nice little modifier onto Shadow Word Pain. You do have to press Shadow Word Pain specifically to tag this, but if you're just like on the move tagging mobs, it can end up doing a lot of damage if you're taking those hits of damage. If you're only doing group content, you could maybe skip this and take like Void Volley instead or something. But if you're doing anything solo, Catharsis is really nice. Driven to Madness. So similar things. If you're in a solo environment, Driven to Madness is really nice because you're getting hit. It's reducing how much your cooldowns. Kind of lets you YOLO send your cooldowns on cooldown more, particularly or with this talent, Dark Ascension and Void Eruption, which is kind of nice. Although it does desync it from stuff like Power Infusion, that kind of thing. But I don't know. I think it's fine just kind of YOLO your cooldowns when you're leveling. Again, if you are in a group and you're doing kind of like group open world stuff, you could take like Scyfiend or something else instead. You're kind of running out of options here. But, solo, the talent's pretty nice. And last but not least, we have Mind Trauma. So usually I don't actually recommend Mind Trauma because it requires you to fully channel a Mind Flay on something. And then you gain 2% haste, which lasts for 15 seconds. The reason why I'm now suggesting it, with all of the changes to Mind Flay Insanity also triggers this, which is really cool, which is something we probably wouldn't have hit before. So one Mind Flay Insanity fully stacks this, and you get a 2% Mind Trauma. You can use this on multiple mobs, so if you're Archon, you're getting those free surges. It can stack, I think, up to 9 times, which is kind of crazy. So 2% haste up to 18%. It's pretty nice. So mind trauma can be fun by leveling if you're kind of moving pack to pack and constantly using your mind flays and mind flays insanity to refresh this. Can be kind of a fun play style. So it's an option there if you want. Obviously, you don't have to level in war mode, but if you want, there's some cool talents available to you. Okay, and then I am not a leveling content guy. You can tell this is not my usual thing that I do, but I don't know. Want to have fun with it. Enjoy the patch. There was a couple things I wanted to share with the community that I just found is like general leveling tips if you didn't know that. So first things first, you're going to start in Dalaran with a leveling process. It's one of the common questions that I've seen asked kind of in and around, specifically in the Chamber of the Guardian. So if you want to park your character if servers are still up when this video comes out, or if you're not sure where to go on launch, you're starting in the kind of newer Dalaran. Now, the other big thing I'll call out before you start in your leveling process is to not ignore professions. They will be important. Crafted gear, while not as valuable right now, I think they're still working on it, fixing some bugs to make them scale a little bit better. Once they do, I imagine it's still going to be worth to kind of get your crafting organized. And in addition to that, crafting also gives experience. So the first time you craft anything, just like Dragonflight, you gain actual experience with that. So that can be a helpful way to augment your leveling. And the other thing, because this is a Shadow Priest channel, I know a lot of you are probably tailoring and enchanting, maybe alchemy, something like that. For the tailors out there, they did make a change now to where the only people that can actually get cloth drops when killing mobs in the open world or dungeons or whatever is tailors. So that can be a good thing to kind of check that early on. Make sure you unlock Kaz Algar tailoring so that you can get those drops to start flowing if you are, in fact, a tailor. I don't know if like economy-wise what that's going to be. I'm not like the gold guy, but it could be lucrative. Might be something to think about. But of course, I'm sharing this tip, so now it won't be. So, and then just kind of note while leveling, have fun, enjoy questing. That's going to be the main source of experience. Don't go too far out of your way for like rares and chests. They really don't give much at all. That being said, profession treasures, if you do see any of those, do give a good chunk of experience. So kind of look out for those. You'll want to gather them anyways at some point, similar to what you did inside of Dragonflight for those free knowledge points. And then most importantly, have fun. I think leveling is a time where you can try out new stuff, try out new talents. You can use the example builds that I have, or just play your own wacky build, whatever you want. Have fun with it. But that's all we have for this video. We'll see you at max level. Enjoy your Shadow Priest. Enjoy the War Within. Thanks for watching.